I'm looking at, I'm looking, I'm looking for your amendment.
Who your,
Here it is, I think, yep.
no, that's.
Draft 3 is the newest.
But you
So
have
it's in the
three.
form of a committee amendment?
Okay,
This is draft
this is
number
draft
three.
three,
It's on
that's
top.
the newest one, I don't have any notes on it. Why does somebody from the credit union care if I vote with no amendments for 267? Okay, let's, so we have Andrea. Okay, so that's a one-liner. All right, Luke, why don't you,
Andrew, you have a one-line?
is that the one-line change? Yeah, or the whole thing? I've got a highlighted section. Is that what it's-
It's the highlight.
The highlight is what you want to change, okay. All right, let's, I'm looking for the proposal from Mr. McNamara. Luke, come on up. Yes, here it is. Okay. Okay.
You said, whatever, I'm just fine, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Martland, Chief Counsel, General Assembly. I'm here on S.267. All of you should have a document that's in the form of a committee strike-all amendment. On the upper left-hand corner says draft number 3, S.267 in the header. Does everyone have that? What this basically does is take the document you looked at yesterday that Senator Pearson discussed with you, take out the highlighting, which indicated what was new and different in that version. Otherwise, everything is the same as what you looked at yesterday, except for the effective dates. So I want to explain that to you. Basically, the text of this is the same as what you looked at yesterday, but the different sections will become effective at different times. The definitions, which begin on page 1 and pertain to tier 2, will become effective in 2021, so delayed. Section 2, the RES categories as to total renewable energy, in other words, tier 1, will become effective in 2020, same as the prior version. However, on page 3, the tier 2 language would become effective in 2021.
July 1st, yep, all right.
Then on page 4, the required amounts, that's really the heart of tier 2. And increasing to 20% is now effective in 2021, so it's been pushed back by 1 year. However, the language in small sub 2 and small sub 3, so that's the lower part of page 4, and then continuing on to page 5, and almost all of page 5, that is effective in 2020. That concerns the mapping, it concerns the report or the feedback from the department concerning the cost of the RES standards language we looked at yesterday. And then jumping to later on, you'll remember there's sections that are in session law that spell out the percentage increase for each of these. It's not new or different law, it just spells everything out very clearly. That also would conform to those dates of 2021 or 2020. So the effective dates is really the big difference in this draft from what you looked at yesterday. Otherwise, the text is the same.
Did we
Are there
say
any questions
July?
about that?
Yeah, here it
Yes.
is.
Oh, you
I
are
was
changing that.
Going, so
Okay.
a little quicker, it's gonna take July 1st each time. Yeah.
Just a little torture because the way the
Structure.
bill was
Yeah.
organized, but basically, the tier 2 changes come into effect a year plus from now, so that we can respond to
Some of the
data.
concerns.
But the so-called mapping for shorthand and the report or feedback about the standard, that goes into effect in 2020. So you're getting some information and getting the process. Yep.
Great.
Otherwise, no changes? Any questions?
Not at this point.
All right, thank you.
All this anguish, and it's such a short little bill. I think the issue is that there's been a whole lot of big numbers
Right.
thrown at us. And a whole, and we're looking at a 12-year frame, and some numbers are this year and some numbers are 12 years, and so it's like the $300,000 for tips, but it gets down to $15,000 a year, which would be a
That's-
fund as decimal dust. So the intent, at least my intent when I suggested we move that date, is that this will give the department, or this says the commission and the department, time to study the proposal and come back to us. And I would, I think, like to rework maybe that top of page 5, 3, to think about what we want them to look at and come back. And probably we should specify timeframes and scenarios.
reporting back.
Well, no, not for reporting back, it's every 3 years.
Right.
But part of it is, I don't know if any of us are clear what number represents this will happen in 1 year, 3 years, or over 12 years, or in 12 years. And
I see what you're saying.
That,
I would just say that's why we try to say concerning the cost of the renewable energy standard, which just
Yes.
was a way to look at the whole thing.
I think we should add impact on rates, or possible impact on rates.
Yeah, it is, it's in there, but sure.
I mean, it just,
Is the renewable energy standard just tier 2?
No,
Yes.
it's tier 1, 2, and 3.
1, 2, 3.
So we probably want it broken out. I think this is, the controversy seems to be around tier 2.
2.
Yeah, I mean, okay.
No one has a
I'm
problem.
open to that. Just for context, I'm looking at something from the Berkeley lab, which is, I think they checked with DOE in 2011. They said cost of solar in 2020 would be about a third more than it is actually turns out to be. So just to the point of
Yeah.
this
The
idea of
unpredictability
regular
of
check.
it, right.
We are still paying a significant
Yeah, and we, part of that.
amount for solar, over and above market. But we did that because going in, we wanted to,
No, and we want
We
to
had
learn
to-
from past
yeah.
mistakes for sure.
well, I don't think it was a mistake then. It's just how long you let it go. I think we never thought we'd go this far. But impact on rates,
I would direct the committee to line 11, page 5, in the
Ah.
same text we're looking at. So there's language
does
there,
say.
you can fine tune that, or move it around if you think appropriate. You can certainly say it in a different way if you wish, but there is some language in there already.
that asks them to insure it.
Well, recommendations as to
Yeah, to
strategies to
minimize
ensure,
it.
so, yeah.
But I think there's not unanimity about how much rate increase would be acceptable, if any, when you're trying to incent more usage. So
So to add that above,
I think we'll put, the strategies underneath, I think, are fine, but I think if the intent is, we're gonna come back and look at this information so that we have the chance to make adjustments before the bill, this tier 2 section goes into effect, that we know the impact of rates. I don't wanna get hit next year with someone saying, my electric bill just went up 20%, or it'd be more like $20, and it's regressive. I mean, a rate is a rate is a rate. You can pay it a lot easier if you're making $100,000 a year than if you're making $35,000 a year.
So do you wanna just call out rates in the first part there
Yeah.
somewhere?
Yep, just study the possible impact on rates. Okay, Greg's got something to, yes. All right.
Can I just go back, because I just want to understand the numbers that have been thrown out here. Just got a note that said the rates could go up between 4.5% and 11.5%. I don't understand, I heard over and over again, I think from you, that the total amount of billing that goes out for electric customers in the state of Vermont is about 800 million.
No, that was under,
Probably did McNamara, but
Hey,
Yeah.
McNamara,
But you
okay.
got around, you got some total cost.
and he said income, so that I guess would be billing income.
Yeah, okay, and then we heard 5 million for
Rygate.
Rygate. So that's 5 million a year versus 8, if the number's right, 800 million. That's about a little bit more than 0.5% right there. Okay. And so, but we've heard all different numbers from all utilities and transmission lines that are from 60 to 70 million. I don't know if that's annually over a 10-year period or a 3-year period. Then I hear 800 million for some 700 million. I just don't know the kind of rate impact we're talking about. And before I vote, I would like to know that.
Join a different industry.
Okay, I think, where is the calculator on this machine?
There are tons of people in this room who know the answer to that.
I don't know that they do. Does anyone know the answer to that? Yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone knows right now.
Well, people have put out different ranges of what
Of
tier
cost.
2.
Of cost.
Well, that, I would assume that the cost factor translates into added cost, added rates. I don't
Right,
think
and
everybody-
all utilities are not the same. I think we're
understand
hearing
that.
more concern from the small utilities
Okay.
now. So, Andrea, do you wanna
I
help
can
us?
speak to
Melissa?
VEC's numbers.
Okay.
And you can extrapolate, we're about 8% of the state, and when it comes to this, I would say utilities are pretty similar in terms of the cost pressures. It's how we deal with them, like if we have a smaller rate base, we have less people to, absorb it
Yeah.
maybe, so, but the costs would probably, be proportionate. In VEC's case, in our testimony that we handed in on February 23rd, our experts estimated that the tier 2, and with the tier 1, the tier 2 changes were more significant. And in Craig Keeney's testimony of February 14th, there were some tables that really
Yeah,
articulated
and
this.
we've got those.
But the summary, and the range has to do with how much we're paying. So on the low end, if we're assuming we're paying 9 cents a kilowatt hour to the higher range of 14 cents a kilowatt hour, that's why there's such a range, because that market does change. We were estimating that the total annual incremental cost to VEC would be in the range of $3.5 million to $8.4 million, and that's annually. For us, that would translate to a rate increase of 4.3% to 11.5%. Annual, a rate increase of that amount, that would carry forward.
And that would be cumulative, it would be 4%. Would it be 4% once, 4 or 11,
Just
somewhere in
rates go
there,
up and then
7%
they
once?
Gradually over a 12-year period.
Well, that would be
Or over.
in, you the sample year we took was 2032 when it's fully
Okay,
realized.
so in 12 years, you would
As it
have an
ramps up.
11%, so about,
But
the
Craig's
worst
chart-
scenario is a little less than 1% a year.
Greg's chart did outline it per year, so you,
That's this one here?
yes.
So he says in 2030, it'll be $500,000 at the low range, but I'm trying to
Tier
understand.
1 was the 500,000.
It says tier 2 supply of 9 cents, incremental cost to comply. 2030 was 553,148. But so does that, oh, wait a minute. Something was funny with this.
I think that's part of
Maybe
our
that's-
interest in really, look, we don't mind a hard look at these numbers, you know, he's our expert, his best look, and the other utilities, you know, we all were kind of scrambling to get you numbers.
Yeah, and
And
3
here-
years
here it
from
is,
now, they
1
could be very different.
1.1 million maybe.
Yeah, and part of what, you know, as we're looking to increase renewable energy, you know, we just want to do it in the least cost way, right? So we don't want to pay more than we need to, we want to be thoughtful, and, you know, so having some time to be more collaborative about how we move ahead, we'd appreciate.
And can you, what's your 8 million a year? What is your total, like, today?
On,
What is your annual budget?
I don't know, I don't remember.
Well,
Revenue.
I can, you know, it's everything, it's poles, wire, you mean for
Right.
energy supply, like on
sure,
power or everything?
let's start with that.
I'll get that to you today.
Well, okay, so-
5 minutes.
Okay, so right now, we're just asking, we're adding impact to rates. All right, Greg, you had,
So we had some concerns about the report. It might be appropriate to offer those now.
Yes.
Might be helpful for this discussion.
Because
If you're
we've
gonna
got-
talk about the report.
because we've got Mr. McNamara's, but that's really a whole new bill. We're trying to come up with a report.
Yeah, I haven't seen Mr. McNamara stuff.
Yeah, well, he handed it out, but it starts out with legislative findings,
Okay.
which is, I think, a little more extensive than we want to go.
All right, so, okay, so I guess I'll start with cost and timing. So
Okay.
we don't have a planning division. This is
Okay.
a pretty extensive report, if you look at the whole scope of it. We would have to hire a consultant to do this. We're not sure what the cost is gonna be, but recently the department estimated about $300,000 for their telecom report, which is also very extensive, has a very large scope, so we're thinking in that area. So we would need money to do this, and we're not sure who we would bill this back to. This is a legislative mandate, so. As far as timing goes, again, we have to
Before
hire.
we move on from that point, Greg, how, the department does the cost analysis every year?
Yep. They have a planning division. That's what they do. I'm gonna get to that.
Okay,
Um,
okay.
So, yeah, my ultimate recommendation would be for the
Department to do it,
this,
which
because
is,
there's
I'm saying,
other
but the
problems
department
with this.
volunteered to do a pretty extensive, so we
They
just,
do it every year.
yeah,
We just wanna
okay.
make sure the PUC
So we'll
is-
take you out, all right.
Right,
Right.
right. Well, and
Okay.
so for cost reasons, also, if we're working with the department on a report like this about constraints in the grid, as you can imagine, we have a lot of pending cases where that is an exact issue in the case. So it'd be difficult for us to work with the department to come up with solutions to that while we're going, while we're being
We're
the judge
working in
in
an
these cases.
adjudication, okay.
It makes
yeah.
it very, so, for a lot of reasons, it's probably better for the department to do this and to get the report
Okay.
up front before you put in the incremental amounts here.
Okay,
Okay? So that's all I have.
all right.
Greg,
Oh, yeah.
do you, we're trying to also figure out a path on this location
Yeah.
issue,
The
right?
locational siting?
Yes.
Yes.
And do you not think that you guys are the right ones to design that?
Again, that would be, well, I think the department would
We
be
might.
well qualified to do that.
All right.
And again, that is an issue in all the cases we have, the location of the project.
Can we have them consult with you, or do you want to be?
No,
out
that
of
would be a
total?
problem. They should probably do that on their own.
Okay.
They're acting as
I understand,
judicial
they just-
board.
It just puts us in a very
Yeah.
difficult position doing this kind of thing, so.
And they'd be coming back with like criteria in terms of the
I mean, I think,
location?
I think so. I don't think it's a simple thing. I think
It's
we
very
need a
difficult.
more simple process. And, but I don't have a special part of doing it. It's just unnerving to me to not call on the experts who are sort of firsthand dealing with this stuff. But that's all right.
I see.
I'll answer your question, I found my spreadsheet if you want, we have a $79 million revenue, sales come in.
Okay, yeah.
And we spent 36 million on power supply, and everything else is salaries, keeping the pulse, you know,
30, what was the 30?
36 million of the 79 just power supply.
So the 1.2 needs to be in that context.
Okay. I,
Madam Chair,
yes,
I just wanted to try and be responsive to Senator Sorokin's question. From
okay,
COA.
for the record,
Sure.
I think you need to talk up a little bit.
Yep, this is Warren Coleman for GMP. Senator Sorokin, Josh Costingay was here last week and provided you a page and a half testimony, and the box, basically, his cost estimate was, had two, correct, exactly, had two components to it. One was basically a power cost, and the other was related to transmission system upgrades. And he has those broken down, but in total, the range would be between 350 million and 750 million. So that's over a 10-year period, so that would be, you know, we can do the math, between 35 and 75 additional each year. And basically what it breaks down to for, in terms of a percentage, is for every $6 million, it's basically about a 1% cost increase for rates. So that was a range, and there was a reason it was a range primarily was because we heard Velco's estimates. We talked about location, where things are, and the cost of those upgrades. And these are not costs that we've incurred now under our current tier 2 in this first 10%. This is going now to more than doubling basically what in-state solar installation would be, and these are those additional costs. So I just wanted to, yes.
What is that as a percentage?
What's that?
What is that as a percentage of your rates? So what is percentage?
So,
It's not the same.
so if it's, so what it is basically for every $6 million in cost, it's equal to 1% rate increase.
Right.
So if we're at 35 in a year, let's just round it to 36, so we know it's gonna be a little bit less than 6, right? If we take the high range at 75, we know it's gonna be a little bit more than 10. So it's very much in line with what you just heard from VPC in terms of the spread of potential rate increase, depending on what that cost is. And none of us can tell you right now for certain what that
Okay,
number
but
is.
that's
It's a
over
range.
12 years.
That is.
Per
that is
year?
Well, that, I'm just saying that, yeah, that rate increase, it's gonna depend on when you spend the, right, when you actually have to
All right, but
to spend that money, but over a
it's
10-year
not
period.
10 to 11% a year.
It's not gonna be a 10 or 11%
Right, it's
increase
going to
each
be
year.
spread over the 12 years, okay.
No, it's saying the opposite.
It's
No.
every year.
No.
Every year it's saying that.
The 10, no, well,
No,
Is my bill going up in the first year? If it average out, is it going up
it's going up.
6% or is it going up 0.6%?
Depends where you
depends
live.
on where you spend the money, right? If
Depends
it's
where you
it's
live,
$35
where the money
million in
gets
a
spent.
given year, that would be an annual increase.
If,
It's 36, that would be, if we just use 36, and each 6%.
Okay, so the 35 million is the amount you have to spend over 10 years?
Each year.
Each year, that's what I'm saying.
it
But not,
depends
it's the same
where-
35 million, it's not 35 additional million every year.
No,
for
it's
10 years.
35.
It's 350.
It adds up to
It's
350.
350
That's my
million,
question.
okay.
Mark has
Yes.
It depends where the money is spent to build stuff,
Yeah.
whether you can get the power out and get it to market. It depends where you incent things that would use electricity, where it is currently being spilled on the ground in constrained areas. It's interesting that the utilities that that are in pretty good shape. They want their share of the efficiency money, which won't be used as efficiently because they're in pretty good shape. And if it was used elsewhere, it would help the entire state. Some of these issues, Madam Chair, they're almost like gold towns and rural towns that have very different needs. And we've operated for the last 15 years or so with pretty much, if someone applied for something in a place and they qualified, they built it. And you can't follow that model anymore. You have to be more precise. And I would say Mr. Coleman, in his analysis, assumes we would be as, I use the word undisciplined, not as a criticism. We would be, assumes we would be, continue to be as random with placing things as we have in the past. And we can't do that. We need to be, we've done a lot of the easy stuff.
And I think we've done this. My question is, if we're going forward with the study, it looks like the department will do the study, so we need to cross out the board or the commission. I'm trying to go over what Ed McNamara said he'd look at, which and see what we have and see what we might like to add or subtract. I think I would like to add the impact on rates up in there. And I think we could let it go as that. And do possible impact rates on an annual basis and over the life, over the 12-year span. So we know when we're looking at something, if we're talking about 1% a year, every year for 12 years, if we're talking 20% spread over 12 years, if we're talking 20% a year every year, just so we know what to expect. And that will give us time, if the numbers are not something we feel are acceptable, to make adjustments.
So could we leave the economic benefit, the package that we're trying to look at here, or
Yeah.
do you want that?
No, I was just doing one little add in there.
Okay, great.
Just
Mike?
add for the record, just, I think I've expressed it before, I'm very concerned about voting something into effect without doing the study. It's putting, in my judgment, the cart before the horse. That we ought to do the study so that we have a bill that's based upon information in which we can reasonably project what the cost of doing something will be and what the effect of the rate plan will be, rather than voting something on the basis of a real uncertainty. We've got some very large ranges of numbers here that we've talked about with a view that, well, we'll come back and fix it. And we know how difficult that can sometimes be.
It can be.
If this is not going to come into effect until 2021, there's ample time when we have the information of the study to make an informed decision to vote this in the January 2021 session and still have it go into effect at the same time.
Okay.
Can I ask Warren a question?
Yeah.
I'm looking at your handout here, and the numbers don't correspond. So you say that as drafted, this adds the following costs. This equals about 350 to 750 million extra net costs for just Greenmount Power over 10 years, as follows. And then the range is for the power costs and for the transmission costs. So the low end of the power cost is 150, and the low end of the transmission cost is 150. So that's 300, but the low end of your range is 350. So I'm trying to follow here, but I don't understand.
I don't know why that number's different, I think that's gotta be a typo, because the other number adds up. So we're
Okay.
still talking between a range of almost 6% and almost 12%.
Okay.
If you wanna shave off half
And
of
then-
1%, that would be the low end.
And then, okay, and this is the, right, I guess, because they don't add up on the bottom chart either, but, okay.
The bottom chart's just breaking out what GMP's share would be of the transmission costs.
You only pay 10% of the transmission cost?
That's not, that's, I don't know how to explain it.
It's based on the amount.
No, they don't only pay 10% of the.
I wouldn't have thought.
No, it's not, it's more like 80% of it. That's sort of, that's GMP's additional cost to them on top of basically what their share of the Velco cost would be. In other words, there's a cost of capital and a cost that they have to incur because they're the ones that actually have to build a lot of this infrastructure. That's what that number represents.
Okay. If we're going to do a study, I'm looking at McNamara's proposal. I'm leaving out the findings and I'm leaving out the studies at tier 1. But it gets down to the potential benefits of in-state generation resources, economic benefits, the potential resiliency benefits, and the potential impacts for increased electric rates. Can we put those in to the study? I'm just,
Okay, so you're looking at his 2?
it's 2 and 3. And maybe even 4, between renewable energy standard and other renewable requirements. That might be that whole, if we didn't cost us $400 million for net metering, that might be a way to offset the cost, because we did that in order to offset, incent the development and capital costs. So we could put 2, 3, and 4 in there. The other one all seems to be tier 1.
That's fine with me.
Yeah. So Luke, did you?
I mean, I think that's fine. I wonder if we want to, well, they can do more as well.
Yeah, they can.
We just sort of rushed.
So if we put that in, will that cover the concerns? It's not gonna go up it's not even gonna go into effect next July, so nothing's gonna happen bad before we get back here. But we made our statement that this is what we're doing.
Okay, I agree with Senator Brock. I
Okay.
think that's the wrong way to go about this. I am willing to put a guardrail on, and I'm willing to accept a certain percentage. If they come back and say a certain percentage of rate increase, I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to go fairly high, but 6% to 12%. And I don't know whether that's, they could be coming up with totally different numbers than what
I think
other
that's
people
why we're gonna
are,
study.
but we'll get those numbers. But I wouldn't vote for, building a new hospital if I knew the rates were going up 12%.
Right.
So we're making a decision now to go forward on something like that. I don't think that's good public policy without knowing the information.
So if we go forward, Madam Chair, we go forward with the direction that you don't build in constrained areas. That's the start off. You build where you can absorb the electricity without having to do the construction. And it upgrades that have gone into the high end of Mr.
Find
Coleman's
out the liberals in Chittenden County.
numbers.
That's
And-
right. I mean,
and-
I want to vote for this, and I want to have all those.
I'm finished.
Okay.
So when you get the study, dictate now what you want to know about, And the study is, you don't continue to build stuff and accept it where it's already, there's more than is necessary. You don't send money, you don't send jobs to places. You're not gonna get jobs in Franklin County or in the constrained area. The reason that it's constrained is because you got a bunch of jobs to build the stuff that is now constrained. So that's gonna have to be in a different place. And the efficiency monies that are gonna go to places with electricity that they can't sell are probably gonna have to be designed to sell more electricity to people that wanna buy it, whether it's manufacturing or electric vehicles. And in other places in the state, you're gonna direct the department to say, this is where you want it to go. This is where the infrastructure can handle it, and this is where it won't cost money. We haven't said those things the way we need to say them now. But if you just tell them to go out and study what's gonna happen if we continue to do what we do now, they're gonna come back with a wide range of numbers.
Okay.
So I would hope we can give them, set some goals and ask them to put some restraints on where it goes.
I think that's what we're asking Luke to draft. Are we willing to put the electric co-ops, Andrea's amendment in? You wanna come up and speak to it?
She wants it both ways or just?
I want it every.
No editorial comment. We don't shoot
Thank you for the record. My name is Andrea.
discourage microaggression.
It was ill phrased, Madam Chair. It was probably macro, micro, something or other.
Usually it's macro, Senator.
I'm with Vermont Electric Cooperative, thank you. One thing just before I get into a very simple amendment, the conversation about rate, cost pressures and rate increases. If this happens, it doesn't necessarily automatically increase rates. I don't want them to think,
Right.
but I do want you to appreciate it is a significant cost pressure.
Right.
So what do? Because we do everything we can not to raise rates because we have such a low income constituency and we do whatever we can. We have not had a rate increase in 6 years. In the past 10 years, we've had less than 1% on average a year.
Anything is gonna be significant to your folks.
And how do we do that, right? Because we've had cost pressures, and this, we've done everything we can to reduce and streamline and be efficient and use technology, and we're out of ideas, So I can't say if you did this, it would be a 3.5, a 4.5. We might not do as much tree trimming. We might not, so it's not. So I guess the conversation, if it's helpful, is it's a significant cost pressure. It may or may not immediately, if we can come up with some other tricks to bring in revenue or do, and frankly, tier 3, that's why we push back on, any restrictions around that, because that's a way that helps mitigate these other upward cost pressures we've had. So just to say, if
Automatic rates.
it doesn't mean it's an automatic rate increase, but
It's an automatic
cost
it's gonna be a
pressure.
cost pressure.
And what goes into rates is a lot of variables.
Right.
A lot. So as you were looking at these changes to tier 2, our preference absolutely is along the lines of please study this first, and then we can participate actively and come back with a thoughtful way to, cost effectively do our renewable energy. We actually feel that's the most prudent way to go, so that's our priority. If you were gonna do something different, that was why we offered this amendment, but we'd much rather not even have to offer it, frankly, but the amendment itself is intended to, it's just in the definitions and net metering. We've had discussions about the constraints, the locational issues, and the paying above market. We've done our own community solar. We've been able to do that at the time 60% less expensively than the large net metering. Now with the adjustments in the net metering compensation is closer to 40%, but we're still paying 40% more for other projects. So that we don't have say over where they're located rather, where they're located or how much we pay. It's must take, must do, and as has been discussed, there actually has been a slowing of the larger ones frankly only because we've been litigating and intervening and there's a cost there as well. We don't like doing this case by case, we actually think it should be state policy, so what the recommendation is to bring the cap of net metering from 500 down to 150. 150 can accommodate all the residential, all the small farm, any kind of on-site projects. We do an exception here. You spent some time last year on making sure school districts. So we wanted to, just start with saying we're not looking to pull them in. We kind of keep that as is.
As is, it goes to 1 megawatt. That was the change we made last year.
I was trying to find, I didn't see that codified and its legislative intent. It was never like in the green books, I don't think, so Luke can sort through that, but our intent here is to not roll that back. To honor that was done last year.
Okay.
So, thank you.
Okay. This would not be just your district though, right?
As written, right, it would be a state policy.
So this would mean, but you're looking at, would this be more, would this impact
That's a huge change. I mean,
citing it, yeah.
The location.
Well, if we could do a 500 megawatt net metering next to some big plant in Chittenden County, you might want to
no matter
do
where the
that.
big plant was.
Where the big plant was.
I mean,
But that's where most of the big plants are going.
You mean an on-site just to reduce load?
Yeah.
Most of those rooftops and whatnot, the developers can weigh in, the experts on what they can do on a site, but we found most of the, real, load-reducing commercial projects are, not in the 500 range, but.
I think I wouldn't have a problem doing this in constrained areas. I would, because there's a reason you can't get it out.
It is my understanding that de facto we have done this in constrained areas for exactly that reason. And I don't know if,
Everybody says they're in court all the time. They may have because they go to
So
court.
we're not doing it efficiently,
Right.
you're not building them, right, or you're not having to accept the power.
The
In the last couple of
applications
years.
have slowed since 2017, but we're incurring,
Yeah.
the costs and the bad reputation, frankly. We're not doing this because we're anti, some
Yeah.
would argue what our intentions. We're a nonprofit cooperative, we're just
Yeah.
trying to keep the rates down for our ratepayers, our members. So we don't have any other motivation but to do the solar through this tier 2. We'd love to participate in a study. How do we do this in a cost-effective way? Because we just don't want to pay more than we need to for those.
So the department will, guidelines we expect from the department under this bill is still proposed.
Yeah, that's, we could add it to the study. And how do we? Because this is really the issue with net metering. And you've got a lot, you've got way more than you can use, and you've got more than you can sell out. And I think we heard even if you can get it out in July to sell it, you lose money, you pretty much have to dump it.
And if I understand the intent of a lot of what I'm hearing is how do we do local renewable energy?
Right.
Great topic, great thing, we all want to, we like local jobs, we like, but frankly, there's not a lot of transparency. We don't know what it really costs until we go out to bid, and when we do that, we get good deals, and we can negotiate, but we can't do that with the net meter, the large net
Right.
meter.
Yeah.
And we don't want to do it on the small, we're not, when we've been intervening, our threshold is, even if it's in the constrained area, we're like not going, we don't want to get into the farms and the small, we're doing 150 and over, that's our internal criteria for when we
Criteria.
jump in.
It's the big guys that are selling a whole lot that you have to buy. at well above market rates.
And other utilities as well.
Yeah.
Can you remind us that there is, you know, in an attempt to address this, the legislature and the PUC set up a cycle where the rates for net metering, which is ultimately what we're talking about, get addressed. Does that also, I know that looks at the little projects, but does that also address the larger group project?
I think it would be for all, but
And when is that next up?
I think it's pretty soon.
Yeah. So are you not confident at all that that will work?
yeah, I don't think we'd be bringing this here if we weren't talking about the other tier 2, you know, cost pressures. We're participating actively. We hope that works out. But we don't know.
Well, we do have, there are 5 pending cases in the GI right now that would get the older rates. We can't, because of when they applied. So even if we adjusted going forward, it wouldn't affect those.
That are here now.
And those are all, I think 4 of them are very large.
So we've got to run out those contracts. We could say, no new ones, but I don't know that we want to do that either.
They're reaching back.
Yeah, that'll just keep all of us in court for a while.
Yeah, we're not asking for that.
Yeah.
I think that Senator Pearson's amendments would direct the department to come back and say to us, don't build any more stuff there. Build it near where you've got where you can distribute it. I don't know how you,
And we appreciate that.
how you go, but retroactively.
Yeah. We
But
do
until,
appreciate
if we don't
it.
begin to set the guidelines for the plans and say, don't build where it
Right.
costs more and build where it continues to reduce costs or keeps things even, then we're putting off decisions that we ought to be making now.
Okay, so why don't you look at, right now, we've got Senator Pearson's wording for the study, plus 2, 3, and 4 for Ed McNamara's. And if we have something on, and we could just put in there proposals for, you know, alternative proposals for constrained areas. Can we add something like that? An analysis of constrained areas and proposals to mitigate any negative rate increases in those areas. That work? This committee is fading, and we have one more bill. Okay.
I say we just do dinner break and come back and say.
We got a break. We have one more bill, and I
Is this-
figure if I make you sit here, you'll vote it out
We need to
quickly.
give Luke.
Let me ask some questions,
Okay,
if you don't mind, Madam Chair. So you are not adding in the proposed amendment to the definition of net metering system? You are not doing that, am I correct?
We're not doing,
Well, just discuss with you.
This.
oh, yes, no, we're not gonna do that. We'll
Instead,
ask
you're
that
adding
to be
language about
studied.
analysis of constrained areas and proposals to mitigate
Right.
rate increases.
Suggestions for mitigating impacts on those areas, if any.
And when would you like this new draft?
I think it's, unless you guys would like to vote it out while I'm gone.
Where you
No,
You're going
I'm going to a
Tomorrow.
fiscal conference.
But that's Friday, right?
We have to get there by Friday.
So we're not
So
meeting
can
tomorrow?
you draft something
No,
now?
you're meeting tomorrow, you're not meeting Friday.
But you won't be here tomorrow.
I will not be here tomorrow, I'm leaving to drive to Dartmouth to get the bus around noon, weather dependent.
The bus, private plane.
And is this?
Yeah,
really
my
bad?
private plane with 4
So,
wheels and a
when-
restroom in the back.
When do you think you'd want this new draft?
I think when we get back from town meeting.
All right.
All right, unless you want to do it tomorrow.
No, it's coming, and then it's going to natural after that, right? Or is that
Yeah,
just the one
it
where there's
should.
Okay.
Can I have one more question?
Okay.
So you're changing commission to DPS, does that include small II on the bottom of page 4 as to the maps and who the maps go to?
No, maps are.
Maps are, leave that alone.
Yeah.
Maps still go to the commission, who posts them and provides them?
You want the maps?
The Green Mountain Power already does it,
Yeah.
I don't know, so it's,
Right, it's already on their website, I'm not, what would we be doing with them?
Well, right now
yeah.
they're going to you, so I don't know what to do with them, I'm just saying statutory language.
Would
So,
would you like a situation?
I don't know, I'm just
Put them
asking.
in a file and there's somebody
Do
else.
the maps go to the PUC or they go to DPS? That's my question. Right now they go to PUC. Do you want them to still go to PUC or do you want them to go to DPS?
they should presumably go to both. I mean, it's part of the strategy around location. And since
planning.
Green Mountain Power already does it, the feeling was that they all have them at some level. But I think they're already, I don't know that you have to change it because, and other relevant persons would surely include the department.
I'm not taking a position, I'm just asking a question. Go to commission, go to DPS,
Both.
go to both. Okay. Thank you, I think everything's clear. Thank you.
Let's add one question.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to remember, what was the genesis of changing from 2015 back to 2005?
It was to ease some of the impact of expanding tier 2, right? Because they've already built generation, small, renewable. The original tier 2 language said 15 or newer. And so it was a way of
So
easing
that was my
some.
question though, was really why 2005?
That's when the first, speed was, I think, our first attempt at stimulating renewable energy generation.
Well, I'm thinking, in terms of the presentation we had from the small municipal utilities, who had some concern that there were some plants,
We did do that language.
that had earlier dates. Now, is that in there? Have I missed it?
Yes, I don't know if you've missed it, but it is in there. That is, at the bottom of page 3,
Top of page 4,
yeah.
hydroelectric plant.
Yeah. So that very specifically,
That's just what I was concerned about. Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna go to the non-controversial bill now, which is the efficiency